All right, everybody. Hello and welcome. This is Vadim, and let's start our week 12 off right with some bubble. What we will look at is a bit of a UI glow up project for a landing page to essentially establish a better brand alignment to the company that this landing page is for. We go from here. This is how it started. You could see how it's just plain and minimal, but yet still servable or usable. And that is essentially what was in production. There is this kind of animated background gradient effect, which comes from a plugin. It's a zero code plugin that allows us to then configure these time-based moving liquid mesh gradient. And if you check out my course on the bubble UI primers, I talk about that there. Yeah, so it's very important to know your gradients in 2025 UI. We go from here. We'll quickly take a look at how we get to this page, which, as you could see here, is an interactive 3D background. So as I move my mouse from center to the corner, so we're interactive on the backgrounds, but then to retain our operational or UX essentially, right, in our, it's still a website after all. We are having this group sit in front of, which we'll take a look at how the page is structured in a bit. But the groups are obviously still functional, but as your mouse moves away, and all of a sudden the user can get just a quick dopamine hit. That's what we're doing with all of this eye candy, but also highly functional and performance stuff. So we'll also take a look at the tips on how to get these settings in Spline and how to know which animations you can use as something that will work for the web truly, and which animations you really shouldn't. So we'll explore that in upcoming videos as well. But yeah, the entire idea here is for us to match the brand and not do something as to what we had before, just because this seems like a initial starter template design, right? Or just even not a fully finished, fleshed out thought. So we glow it up. We have an align to parent group that takes up all of our available viewport, and we throw in a very performant and how we get still interactive enough to be cool element as our background. And then we have a very simple layout of just a floating group on top and a floating group on the bottom to hold our nav bars, and then one repeating group element that gives us these cards. We're here on the before page. We have obviously this background element that in and of itself is becoming a marquee thing, but in a very small way, right? So we're still just looking at these three buttons, very clear kind of path. So either do this or that. So we're going to let go of the background. That's what's going to get replaced with the spline element embed. Then we have the cards, which have this little hero image, or like the card image. It does have an image zoom on hover effect on it. So that we will keep actually, because it's just pretty neat and totally fine. And then the cards themselves, we're going to do a little bit of work on, mainly just in the sense of changing their color scheme to reflect the new dark pattern. And then otherwise, we're going to pretty much keep the entire page. Yeah, so bars at the top, bar at the top, bar at the bottom, our social links, and all of the different, stuff. Okay. So what we did, obviously, then if you're following along or building wanting to build a page like this in your editor, you'd have this set up, right? So really simple, just again, floater, And then my kind of traditional strategy that I use almost everywhere now. So let's see, this is the in-between group. So there's a top bar and then we have a bottom bar, but there's also basically another floating group in between, and that is set to be floating relative to both up and down and centered. So we're floating it in between it basically, and that allows us to create this kind of fixed structure. And that's the structure that then allows us to have this aligned to parent kind of thing that just has this solid background. And yeah, what we did was we had initially just actually I can probably show that here. The plugin that I mentioned prior, it's this one. It's animated background gradient. So we set the HTML ID, and that's how we target what surface we wanted to render this spread of mesh gradients on. This is still an amazing plugin. I use it all the time, and it's fantastic, but just not the exact fit that we need here, right? What we then did instead is just dropped a simple HTML element and then grabbed our iframe code from Spline off whatever scene you are using or what we've put in here. We are able to then, just for our educational demo purposes here, drop this in. Then the main thing that we did after that was obviously work on the color scheme. There's plenty of material, amazing, excellent material on how to manage different color schemes and do things theming in Bubble. So here we focused on just getting our look. What we did was change the background color here. Then we increased the shadow amounts. So the shadows that were, if we go back to our previous look, so as you see, it's a small hover on effect that's pretty fast. It allows us to have this kind of slightly raised effect, and then I tuck mine in with negative spread values. But so we have this shadow, it's coming up. So what we did in the glow up was actually take our vertical values, so lower it, then blur it out and span it out, we make it bigger essentially. So if you go all the way up to 40, which is like an XXL size, it's really, so I cover that in my initial Bubble Primer UI course, and we'll be also touching on this a lot. But sizing of shadows, whether you're working even with Tailwind or something non-bubble related, but 40 blur is going to give you really wide, almost too much at times. We also gave more padding on the cards to make the card, its surface itself, be larger, and then tuck the content in. For our shadows, as we see here, we can try this, and we can actually flip this to the front end preview now and quickly take a look at what that means. What we had on the previous bare bones initial look, it were 200 millisecond times on the transitions. The way that these work, and I talk about them in this sense, not sure if it's a proper way to talk about it, but it makes sense. But for really fast, performant, dashboard oriented, or lots of user interaction and clicks, you definitely wouldn't want these to be large because it's jarring, it can be uncomfortable and just slow. But then, so your no transitions or no micro interactions is like 0, and then we go up to 100, 200, 500 here, step up to 700. So 500 would be considered like medium slow, and then 700 and 1000 is full on. That's really slowing down the page, but intentionally. And what I mean by that, so if we look at our new big shadow, and let's just say we slow things way down, 700, so we're on a landing page, right? We're not working with any dashboard material right now. So it's more appropriate to have slower things here, right? So as the user arrives here, all of a sudden they notice their mouse is interactive, so they become slower maybe. And then as your user experience, then right naturally, as you're developing these things, you should be thinking at the same pace as a user, right? So usually when I do this, I go through things. I'm like, okay, cool. Then I hover onto this card. We can start to see how we have, yeah, so here's what I meant actually. It's been improperly set right now, so we're gonna fix that in a second. But you could see how gradual the things are. And just like the design itself is meant to be gradual, then it stands to reason that we want to match our UI elements, the stuff that's actually coming dynamically from Bubble. So what we will do, let's take a look here. Back to our card shadow. So here on the container wrapper CTA card item that I have, let's go to the color value. And you know what we'll do, because it's so we have a really dark background, right? It's pretty much a really low, dark value there. So we don't per se need a ton of shadow on the initial like page load or just the initial card look. So if we drop that to 0, and then we even bring, because I don't know if it might have been a bit hard to see, but it'll be more apparent now. Yeah, I try to stick to 24 and 32 as the largest, unless it's something really special and large elements. But for the most part, yeah, we usually even come down here to 16 or 12 or... Now we will have no shadow on these cards when they're loaded, but you know what we'll do? When this is hovered, let's go ahead and make it a bit more dramatic color. So maybe we'll do purple. We will also flip the border colors. We're essentially setting here on the conditional that when this group is hovered on, so for us to initiate kind of micro interaction animation, we're going to say we have a border style, then we have a border width. Yeah, let's say we make it 2 pixels, which will thicken it out just a little bit. And then we can do roundness as well. So this is something I had not initially done, but we'll make the card go from our already curved 16 value just ever so slightly to maybe 18, or let's start with 20 just so it's more obvious. So the borders, as you hover onto it, not only will it lift up, but they will also curve in a bit more, right? So again, for just a simple landing page that only is requiring us to engage with the user and then have them proceed, yeah, we can afford to do these kinds of really, I guess, cool, fancy things. So let's go ahead and preview that. And now the shadow on the cards, yes, is going to be gone initially. Yep, here we go. So there you go. So our mouse hovers out to the bottom, and you can see how as we go through here, we're reset as not to interfere with our user experience. And then we come out, so tops and bottoms are open. But now when we also, as we do our interactive experience here, and for the 7 to 10 seconds of attention that we as humans have right now, we simply go, cool, okay, oh, okay, card, oh, nice, that, now it's really accentuated. We have this whole 2 pixel border. The shadow is not super pronounced. So what I would do then, if we want a bigger effect, and you know what, let's actually do this. I also, these colors need to be changed on the buttons. And as you saw in the beginning and when we started, they were. So we can change that. But for now, let's just create a really simple effect. So what I'm doing here is I have this Mac plugin. I'm sure it exists on Windows and whatever other systems, but I'm just commanding, and I have a specialized shortcut, and then it just shows me everything, exact hex value code of what's on the screen, right? So really, I think it's called Pixel, or goodness, I have so many of these plugins. So anyways, reach out basically, yeah, like comment and reach out and let us know if you need it. It's free. It's free. There's tons of, I think, yeah, web-based free ones. So anyways, what am I? We have this color value and just this nice teal. So if we go back to here, we'll say for border color, we will use our teal that we just captured. Then background, yes, is fine. Border. So I'm going to add to our list here shadow style. Actually, shadow style, it doesn't need to be added because we're not changing that. So remove shadow style, but then do add shadow. And again, we would often, most likely, keep in mind, do this in styles and do this in all sorts of other ways. But just for demo purposes here, or even a landing page, yeah, sometimes if you have something super small and minimal, no reason to go all in on the style stuff unless your app is super well defined. So we have shadow. We will go ahead and alter a couple of these values, okay? So roundness, yeah, blur is 32. Let's say we actually make it smaller or a little bit, bring it in. And then spread stays at 16. And border, you know what? No. Let's skinny out our spread. And that, you'll see the factor in a second. And then, yeah, border width can still be fine. So this card now more or less match our button here. And let's see, then we have everything else. Yeah. I think maybe one thing on box shadow color, obviously we need to bring this up. So as you'll see me talk about this in various material, but typically you'll have your box shadow color. It's very important, right? That's across dashboards. That's across every single one. Mobile web, web 3, web 4. We're going to have box shadows everywhere. So it's to make things really nice and smooth and subtle. It's from 8 to 16 is to start. Then 24 to 40 is like your heavy shadow. 40 to 64 is your dramatic, ultra heavy shadow, possibly something for like very specialized things. And then obviously 100 is just going to be full blast. So depending on what you want, and for us, we're just going to say, so I like to use values of 8 here and 64. So we're going to make it pretty dramatic. And then if you remember on our actual things here, we have background window. We don't have shadow as one of the properties. So now, because we've set a conditional shadow, we're going to go ahead and make sure that we also call for it in our style transitions. So we'll make that pretty slow as well. And now we should be able to have this pretty production ready transition experience. Okay, background design is fine. Let's navigate to this card. All right, so look at that. We have the color be congruent. Okay, so yeah, so you can see here how it's just too much. There's too much, and because it's sitting in a repeating group, we don't have we have things cutting off. That's not right at all. What we would do right now, we see, because we're using such a wide value, but still that's not enough because our shadow right now is huge, right? Let's go ahead and just make that more, 24 probably to start. 8 is, I love to use values of 8. Now on cards, anything like this is, if for now, we are not doing horizontal offsets at all. So it's usually just either 4 or 8 or maybe 2 on vertical offsets, and then we do heavily manipulate the blur and the spread to get our desired UI schemes. What we can do here, we're going to make that shadow smaller. Then I'm also going to give it a couple more pixels on the bottom, and also margin offset it on the left more, so that the shadows, right? Because if you have a group and a card that's sitting inside another element, this way, especially in a repeating group, it will cut off and not allow you to show everything you need. So now we gave it basically a lot more space and shrunk a little bit the shadow itself. Let's see then, would that be enough? I think maybe I'll come back in here, what I noticed earlier. So what did we set for? 64, okay. All right, so let's go ahead now and preview this on our front end. Okay, so we have background is in, hover onto card, and for my taste personally, that is still completely wrong on the shadows here, okay? So back in the editor, as experienced bubble users are familiar with, back and forth sometimes. So border colors are fine, solid, blur. So we're going to shrink this now down to 16 or so. And then here, yeah, we're just going to make it more subtle. In production, yeah, typically, you always start with a lot more shadows, but everything, and then as you get closer to completion, things just somehow become more, at least they should, right, minimal and usable. So spread radius is 8. Yep, border width, okay. So let's see. Then that should be about it. Now, if we preview this again, so just to check, initially we have nothing. And you know what, now we actually, let's say we do want just a slight raised look and feel, even when the card is not hovered. Typically, that will be the case, right? So we could say something like 24% here, and it will be this kind of darkish, slightly brand greenish teal. Yeah, so this teal is actually different from the true brand teal that is used for this company. But otherwise, we do have, yeah, conformed look. Okay, so let's take us back in, and we'll do one final preview here. Yeah, so still slightly, perhaps maybe could use a little work here, but you could see how card just raises ever a bit. Then we have the background giving us just the one interactive element, and we're still maintaining focus here as much as possible. If you then want to apply a marketing perspective on this, right, we would change the color of these buttons. And as you remember in the beginning, we have the purple here, the orange, and the brand teal green. We have the color set on the actual element, but then we have this expression here in our conditional calling for current cells index. So very simple and easy thing to use, right? And again, if you already have bubble experience, and this is just review, if not, current cells index will allow you to do a lot of things like this, right? So you can absolutely specify and call for which thing we're doing. So we have the colors set there. Now, because we have this conditional saying when there's something in slot 2 or index position 2 inside of this list and collection, then we're going to change the label, but also now let's add the color. The background color, when it's in 2, if we want to match the structure we had previously, then we would just do that. But for now, let's say that in 2, we go ahead and actually put this green, just the apps set green success color, and then we will also do for background color on 3, now maybe can be red, right? So we changed the label, and the label is what is spelled out in the button, and then we actually now are changing the color. And when we preview that, let's take a look. There we go. All right, I hope this has been helpful, and if you would like to see this made perhaps into a mini course or a more fleshed out longer tutorial that includes all the different parts of basically us building this from scratch, do let us know. Simple landing pages like this are amazing in Bubble. It's really interesting how unlimited we are with what we can build here. Thank you so much again, and I'll see you guys all very soon.